welcome to my studio. Today we're working on the Navajo dolls with the mini squash blossom necklace, and I've wanted to do something like this for a long time, and I've come up with a design and I think you're really going to like it. What I think is really unique is we're going to teach you how to make the mini squash blossom necklace out of seed beads. This is a design that I had to come up with to really set the doll off, and I just really think it makes it kind of authentic and fun. So let's get started. Today we're working on our little Navajo dolls, and these are cute little ornaments that you can use to hang, make nice gifts, anything you want to do with that. I'm going to talk about our supply list for our dolls. You guys are always asking me for supply lists, so we want to make sure that we get that posted up there. You can use different things than what I use. This is just what I used. I used a glue gun, tacky glue, super glue, gray thread, black thread, embroidery needle, a beading needle, silver bead size 10 or 11 seed beads, turquoise seed bead size 10 or 11, a tiny little bit of wire that fits inside the beads, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So wire cutters, just a little clippers to cut the little wire with. A native bead or a shell bead. I use my oval templates, native fleece, black velvet material scissors, regular scissors, a wooden ball, a 1.5 inch or 1 1/4. We'll talk about that. Some sinew, a bead cap, stuffing, flat varnish, black or gray yarn for hair, white yarn to tie the little bun, Q-tips, white paint, black paint, adobe red paint, coffee latte paint. That is folk art, but you can use whatever color. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Liner brush, a flat number 6 paintbrush, whatever you want to base coat with, a stipple brush or Q-tip. We did come up with some little packets for you because we found a lot of these were very expensive. Like the fleece was $20 a yard. Our big yarn was nearly $16. It has the black velvet already pre-cut, the fleece already pre-cut, the big yarn to make the hair, just a little bit of white yarn, some silver and turquoise beads, some sinew, the wooden ball, bead caps, the small wire to put into the necklace, and stuffing. And I just did a quick total just to kind of see if you had to go out and buy everything here brand new, it would cost you about $83. So check those out at miriamjoy.com, and we have a bunch of those to help you make our doll. We're going to start painting the face so it can dry as we're working. I used a wooden ball. You can even use a bead where it has holes in both ends. This is 1.5 inches and this is 1.25 inches. I know there's a big difference, and I did measure them, and there really is only that much between them. So it kind of depends on what you like. To make it easier to put the face on today, I'm going to be using the 1.5 inches. And I played with different colors. You might want to see what you have, what you like. On this one, I use nutmeg, and to me it's just a little bit brown and a little bit red. So on this one, I used coffee latte, and this was folk art. The other one was apple barrel. So use what you have, what you like. For the lips, I played with all kinds of colors, and I kept going back to adobe red. You might even try mixing a little bit of skin tone in with it to tone it down. That's up to you. So in the meantime, we're going to get this one done. And it is easier if there is a hole in it. You can put it on a paintbrush or a stick or anything like that, so you can get this base coated easier than having to hold onto it with your hands. And it's probably going to need at least 2 coats depending on the type of paint that you're using. You don't want to be able to see through it. You shouldn't be able to see through your paint. And I'm just using a flat brush. You can use any size you want. We're just going to base coat this little guy. And I do want to show you, I did try, the first one I used satin varnish because that's all I had at the time. And I do not like the gloss on it at all. I like the flat varnish, so that's something to think about. Might be easier to paint these first down here and then move to the top. That way you wouldn't have to repaint the top where I'm going to have my finger held. And that's drying really fast because that's just absorbing into the wood. Okay. So I'm going to set that down and let that dry. And let's show you what I mean about the flat. So this is the satin, and it's just got that little bit of gloss on it where the matte doesn't, and I really like the matte better. So I'm going to use black velvet. The Navajo people usually make their dresses out of velvet and silk, and I'm using black because that's so versatile. I can use it with all my colors of fleece. You could use any color you had, or if you had any. So we're going to be cutting our velvet, and we don't need a lot here. I'm going to be using the Miriam Joy craft templates. If you don't have these, they're great for everything, including material. And I'm using the third from the outside. 1, 2, 3. That is the third largest size from the outside. And those are a Miriam Joy product. And I'm just going to lay that on my piece of material. And if you do them from in the kits, they are already pre-cut for you. Grab my charcoal pencil here, and we're just going to gently bring it all the way around. If it's not writing for you, you can take your lighter and heat it up, and it'll make it soft, and then you can write with it again. Use my material scissors here and just cut this puppy all the way along the edges. Black velvet will pull through the material, so if you want to quickly take it and zigzag the edges, feel free to do that. I just take my needle and run it on the inside a little bit way so that it doesn't pull out. But if that happens to you, you may want to do that. Or put some hot glue along the edges real quick, and we'll do that later on. So now I'm going to use my black thread and my embroidery needle, or just any needle that you can use with your thread. And we're going to just stitch this with a running stitch, and I'm going to double my thread so that it is nice and strong. And thread it and then tie it, and tie it with a tail so that we can tie back onto it. So I'm going to come down here, and because I want to leave this tail, I'm going to wrap and wrap and wrap it several times to make this a big enough knot that it doesn't go through. And that looks pretty good. And just a big running stitch. We're going to do it a ways in, because remember we talked about that pulling out, so we're going to come in right about there, and I'm going to start at the bottom just so I have that no reason, and we're just going to do a running stitch in and out. You want to do about equal lengths. It doesn't need to be too perfect or too close together, but you don't want it too far apart. And this is just going to gather up our velvet so we can make our little body. And if you're a gourd person, you could take a gourd, banana gourd, to make the body and make the head with, and I wanted that on the outside, not the inside. I should have started it out there so I could tie onto it easier. Take the head, use a Tennessee spinner or a mini bottle gourd, and chop the top part of that off and glue that on for the head. Make sure they'd be proportionate, and you could paint the body black with the velvet and do the face just like we're doing. Everything else would be exactly the same, and then you would have it done in a gourd. I would love to do a little Christmas tree with a bunch of these on it. I think that would be really cute. But I got so many family members, they're going to make great gifts. I already have an order for 10 of them, so I've got my work cut out for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this all the way around, and then we'll pull it. Alright, we've got this run all the way around. I've got both of the tails on the outside. We're going to start pulling that together. We're going to take our polyfill filling, just kind you buy at the store. You can get it at Walmart or any of your craft stores or sewing stores, and just start to pull that real nice and tight. You want that pretty stuffed pretty good. It doesn't have to be real tight, but just enough that it's got nice, good shaped body that we can hold it tight to glue things on. And you're not going to meet it all up in the circle. It's not going to all come tied together. We're just going to kind of get it there and stop. And I'm pulling both the ends now, not just the one. Cut my thread so I have a little bit more give to it, and I can pull it a little bit tighter. I'm going to put that through twice. So I took my knot, instead of just running it through once, I ran it through twice. That will help hold your knot in place while you get it tied easier, unless you've already got a knot there and it's not going over the top of it. I may have to get a husband and a finger in here. I have a little clamp too that I'll use, or those little tiny pink ones. They're nice and tight, and sometimes you can get that on them and put it there while you get that second knot in. And I still don't have it. And this is why we leave things in like this, because if it happens to me, it will probably happen to some of you. And I didn't get that pulled quite as tight as I would like it. And if I left my needle on, instead of cutting it off like I did, I can stitch it again. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just running it through the gathered parts of the velvet, and I used my end, and I'm just going to pull that again tighter, and we'll get that nice and tight, well, as tight as we want it anyway, so the stuffing isn't coming out. How's that? So we get the stuffing stays in. So I'm going to put a knot back in that and watch my other knot. Make sure it's on the outside. And you probably have a better way of doing this. And if you do, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to take my hot glue gun, and just so the velvet doesn't pull off, I'm going to glue these edges just real sloppy here because this isn't going to show. And also your knot so it doesn't come undone, and that everything in there stays put. And that's all going to be covered up, so you're not going to be worried about it. Let's see our little body shape. And this is going to get dirty. And I use my lint roller, or if you don't have that, just use the back side of your tape and just get that all cleaned up. But wait till we get done messing with everything and then do it then. Alright, we're going to go ahead and do one more layer on our face. And then while that's drying, we'll go back and we'll cut our shawl out of the material. So we'll see if we need one more coat or if 2 is going to do it. So let's make our pattern for our shawl. And if you do get the kit, that does come pre-cut, just because it's as easy to cut it out as is to cut the material. I do them 9x4, but you can do them smaller if you need to, bigger, however you want to do. I take my paper, I fold it in half, and I'm going to measure 9 inches out here, just so I kind of have, 4 inches, 9 inches long. We'll measure that in a second. And I just kind of eyeballed mine the first time. So half of 9 is 4.5, and so I'm just going to make it, and I just kind of eyeballed it and curved it. You can do more, you can do less, however you think that needs to go, but we're folding in half so it is the same on both ends. That's kind of what is important more than anything, is it's the same shape on both ends. And then we're just going to cut that out. And we're going to take a look at it. We can decide if we need it bigger, longer, whatever we think it should be. And that looks pretty good to me. Right there, just like that. And I try not to waste anything, so we've got it on the back of our supply list. So then we're going to take our native fleece material. And when you're having this cut, if you get one with a lot of lines in it, make sure they cut it straight with the design. Ask them to cut it straight with the design, because they usually don't. And then you lose a lot. So, and you can order 1/4 of this. You can order whatever small amounts, because it's only 4 inches wide. So remember that. And if you wanted to, you could line this up so it's even in the back. I do not do that. The reason being is I would lose a lot of material, but if you only want to make a few and you want it that way, then do it that way. There is no right or wrong. It's just however you like it. Now I have done one up here, so I'm going to do it up here, and I want to make sure it kind of is even with all the designs on the pattern on the material. So once we've got that lined up, we're going to pin it on even with our design, and then we're going to cut that out with our material scissors. And I just want this pinned well enough that it's not going to slide or move around on me. And we're just going to cut all the way around this. Try to make the edges as nice and smooth as you possibly can. And all the way across with our pattern. I'm just going to come in here and clean this up a little bit on anything that I kind of needed to clean up, straighten out after I move my pattern, and you can see it. There's a bunch of things that you could do with this. You could get your sewing machine and you could zigzag along the edges, and you usually have a front and a back. This side is not as colorful as this side, so know that you want this on the outside, and think about that when you're doing it. You also could come in and bead it. You could come in and you could glue a border on it with different things. There's all kinds of things that you could do to this too. Really make it fancy if you wanted to. So you could make it as fancy or as simple as you want. This is covered pretty well, but I still have a couple of spots that I can kind of see through, and especially just on this area because so much of it's going to be covered up, and you can do a front or a back and not have to worry about the rest of it. But I just want to do that real quick, and so we can start working on that face. For the hair, I wanted to find some wool, and I went and looked and looked and looked and looked, and the only thing I could find was I found this at Joann's. This is KNC, and it's 100% wool, and they didn't have any black. All they had was gray, and the kind of the background colors I'm using, I think it went really well, but I'll talk to you about adding a little bit of black to it, so you could use black if you can find it. I cut these in 4-inch sections to do the hair, and we'll go ahead and kind of start these while we're waiting for our face to finish drying. So I'm going to do 2 for each section, for the bun and for the hair on the face or on the head. So let's do each of those. And if you can find some wool, that's more power to you. That would be great, but sometimes you have to go with what you can find, and that's why this was so expensive. This was $16 a scan. So we're going to unwrap this, and I am going to pull this apart, kind of spread it out as much as possible without taking it apart. Probably about 1 inch, it looks to me like. And we're gonna kind of just start laying it one on top of another. And I'm going to use the 2 pieces and for this. We're going to set that right on top of that one. So we want to get this nice and thick. So actually it's 2 pieces, but when you take them all apart, it's kind of like 4. Keep pulling it apart. And pulling it apart. We're almost done with this part. And we're going to sew this a little bit, and it's so that we can put it around our head, but it kind of goes so you can pull it around and back, If you don't sew it, it's so much harder to do that. So we're going to use our gray thread because that's the color of the hair. And just a regular needle. I'm just using my embroidery needle, but any sewing type needle. You want to do it in the middle. So think about where the middle is. And kind of close to that edge. And you just hang that tail out. You really didn't need that knot. And we're going to go back behind this first stitch a little bit. And we're going to start this all the way across. Up to this stitch. And then back behind this one a little ways. And it's kind of hard to do because it is not solid. And don't pull it really, really tight. But we don't want it not tight enough. So back behind. And I'm going to try and get my thread pulled right. And up. And then back behind. And this is going to give it a part as well and give it some style. And also give it the shape in the front. So and then we're going to end up going back up. And so we have all of that there. And this is dry enough I can kind of show you why. So we have that there, but also so we can gather it back here. And you could probably do yours a little bit neater. Alright, so I'm going to tie this off, and I'm going to tie onto that front one. And this is all going to be underneath, so we're not going to worry about that. And then we're going to start our face, and then we'll finish up our hair after we get our face done and varnished. Okay. Alright, I'm going to set that aside. What I did for my face was I went on Pinterest and looked at, I brought up doll faces to paint, I guess is what I did. And I kind of looked at different eyes and different noses and different mouths, and I tried a bunch of things. Now, the one thing I will tell you is don't try to be perfect. You can come in and kind of put it where you think it should go to help your guideline here. Remember, this is more where your hair is going to go, and all this is going to come down, so it's more from here forward. So think about that, and don't worry about it being perfect. That's kind of what gives it its character. So if one's a little bit wonky, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we're going to try and do a real basic face today. You can get as fancy as you want to. You can get as simple as you want to. We totally leave that up to you. And if you don't like what you have, I've got my Q-tips. And you also can take it off, or if you can't get it all the way off, just paint back over it again. I did that. I think the first time I spent an hour and a half on my face trying to get it right. And I thought, you know, this is a little bit ridiculous. So you can kind of decide what you like or don't like and take it from there. Okay, I have a bigger one here. Let's see if we can get these the same. There we go. I might try to pull these just a little bit out. If you don't want to mess them up, don't do it. Okay, I think that went really well. And then I'm going to do a small one. I usually do this with my liner, but I might just try doing this with just this little guy. Do her nose. I don't like that. A nose is just a shadow. You don't draw the nose. You draw the shadow of the nose. You always wondered why you had problems with noses. We're just doing shadows of noses. I'm going to make it look like a mustache here, I think. I think it should be a little bit lower. I might have to go to my liner here. And we could play with it 100 times. Don't get caught in that. So let's just make a little... Good. And then we're going to... I've got him way off to the side. Now I'm being that one person that we talked about. Right placement, just a little bit thicker than I wanted. Okay, one more time. We can do it. We can do it. Okay, I'm gonna leave it because it's gonna be me Beanbug, not anybody else. It's just me. Now we're gonna try to do our mouth here. I'm gonna try putting it on with just a Q-tip. I've tried this before and I ended up liking just the Q-tip. And I'm going to do just a little bit of liner in here. And try and make that look a little bit, curve it up a little bit. And this is another thing that I try and make too perfect, and I just need to leave it alone because it's better than what I always think it is. So then we're going to use a stipple brush. You can use whatever type of stipple brush you want. I use a fabric brush. The trick to stippling is barely getting any paint on that brush. I'm loading it on the side and taking that off really, really well so that you're only getting a tiny, tiny amount of paint. And we don't want her to look like, well, you know what I mean. We just want her to look like she's been out in the sun. Give her a little bit of color, not a lot of color. But see how lightly I'm applying that? And with fabric brushes, you can really work them. If you're doing a different type of brush, a stipple brush, you may not pounce as hard. You can also turn it a little bit. Trying to make a match here. That's not bad. May have ended up getting that one a little bit more color than that one. Okay, that's good. See the little wetness in our eye still? We want that to dry, but while that's drying, let's go back and let's put our eyebrows on. And we're going to do that in the same color. You could, and follow the shape of your eyes. And I'm going to go back to my liner here. You could try either one that you like, stylist or liner. So I set my finger there to stable it and pull that shape. I'll do the same on this side, try and match them up as much as possible. I've got one a little bit higher than the other one. You also could use a permanent marker. If you decided you wanted to use a permanent marker, do everything else first, varnish it, and then put your marker over the top so it doesn't run. Because a lot of times it will want to run when people go to varnish it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up that eyebrow right there at the tip is the only thing I'm trying to get the same. And once that's done, we'll come back and we'll add the highlights to the eyes. So with a little bit of white and our liner brush, we're going to make these complete circles, kind of. This part here, so we're going to kind of bring it around there. And let's do the same on the other side. So we're just making that inside a circle. I'm a little bit shaky today. Move my plate a little bit. Give me a little bit more work room so I can brace it a little bit better. Okay, there, much better. And then we're going to add a little bit of reflective light. You can do it however you think that should be. Just do it the same on both sides so you don't have her staring cross-eyed. I got this one a little bit lower. Let's try that again, just a little bit higher. And if you don't want to do that, that's too hard, just put the reflective light in, just to do a dot. Just do a dot. There's no right or wrong. I can't seem to do it today either, so some days are better than other days. There we go. There we go. Alright, and see how that gives her like she's looking at you. So I really, really like that. I have a little spot right there. I don't know if we can get it off or if we need to repaint that. And we're going to give this just a second to dry all the way up. I think it's fine. And then I'm going to go out and spray varnish it. You can use brush on varnish. There's no reason you can't. But remember, we're going to use matte. So I'm going to put that back on my stick, go out there and spray that. And then we're going to keep working on our hair. So let's start working on our button. We're going to do the same thing that we did for the hair part. We're going to do it again. Now, if you wanted to paint black on this, you could paint it in between the layers here, so it would be more black. I did paint black on this one, but I did it afterwards, and you can see kind of more the striping in there. I do like that, but if you wanted it blacker, I would paint it on each layer. Just take your black acrylic paint and paint it. If you had some spray, black spray paint, that would be even better yet if you wanted to make it black. So those are things to think about and do if you want that more black than gray. I don't remember a lot of gray hair growing up. There's a lot more now in the Native people. My mom had Native blood in her, and she died at 86 years old and probably had 10% black or gray hair in her black head. She had lots of black hair. I probably had more in my 20s than she had when she passed away. I just think our diet and chemicals and everything have changed that. So we're going to do these 4 layers again. And each time you do this, it gets easier. And if you're going to do a bunch of them, do them assembly line. It's so much faster and easier to do them that way than one by one by one. By the time you drag everything out and everything. So we're going to make our little bun. And I kind of did it like on a pencil or something like that, and got that nice and tight. And you may want to even duck that in and roll that under and give it a couple of layers. You can play with it a bit and see what works best for you. See if I can hold one bun and do the other side. Or you can fold it over and then fold it over again. And just do whatever way works for you. So that way I folded it over, and then we kind of fold it over again. But you've got to have enough to tie down here. And we don't want areas that are real big. So you can do that a couple of ways. This one's smaller, and usually there is one side that is smaller than the other side, but do what looks good for you. And you may want to do it more than once. You decide. This is a little bit okay. And if you want to make your yarn a little bit longer, do 6 inches instead of 4, so you can roll that up a little bit more. I'm going to turn that tip over just a little bit here and bring that up. I think that'll be good. And we're going to take our yarn. This is just white yarn, about 6 inches. And I'm just going to tie it. Wrap it around a few times first. And then I'm going to tie that in the front. Leave it long enough that you can tie that. You want to double knot it. And then I took this bottom part, take a needle and run that through so that it's hanging straight instead of trying to pop up, if you want to do that. Alright, I'm going to go grab my head. It should be nice and dry. Okay, so we're going to kind of show you how this goes on before we glue it. So we want all of our face to show, but it come around and see where we've sewn it. Now we can pull that hair and that doesn't separate, and we just glue that on. Now before we glue that on all the way, we need to put our hanger on her if you want a hanger. And we're going to do that with our bead caps, and we're going to use some sinew, and that is in the kits if you buy the kit, and we're going to separate it. And you can separate this. See how that comes out real easy. And we're going to use this to string our necklace with. And that's really nice to bead with because that's waxy and it's got that tight layer, our strength to it. And we're going to take our bead cap, and I'm going to super glue this on. If you want to use wood or E6000 or anything like that, you can do that. It just is going to take more time to dry. That would need to dry like overnight. Make your hanger as long as you want. You can do any type of hanger you want. I like the sinew because it's strong and it's also kind of a little bit more natural, so it doesn't show up as much. It's more see-through, so it doesn't distract from anything. So that is the reason that I'm using the sinew. I'm going to be using super glue. I'm going to use the Gorilla brush and nozzle. If you guys haven't had this, this is wonderful because you can use it through the tip, which gives you a tiny amount, or you can brush it on with the brush. So there's a couple ways that you can use that. You could either do one or the other right on top of the middle of that head. And if you have a bead and you have holes on both sides, you just need to make sure that your bead cap is big enough that it can go over that hole. If not, you can use some quick wood and put it on top of that to fill that in so that you could put the hanger on there. And we're just going to glue that on and make sure we've got that as straight as we can and that our hanger is straight so that our girl hangs straight and is not lopsided or anything. And I'm just going to put some of this around it just a little bit to work in the edges just a tiny bit. And all of this is going to be covered up by the hair. If you're comfortable without doing it without the bead cap, then go ahead and do it without the bead cap. It just helps hold it on and makes it more manageable. I am going to use the needle again, and we're going to put the top of our holder through and pull that into the hair. And that's just so we can get that through the hair and get that on. And I should have, let's get our glue on here. We're going to be using now tacky glue, and kind of know where your hair goes so that we can bring that, get that everywhere. We've got our watchdog growling and watching, doing security to his best ability. We were trying to figure out how you could do a Navajo man, and their hair and everything would be the same. I think you would do their mouth different, but maybe put a hat on them. Of course, not the squash blossom. You can make a different type of necklace. Okay. So I'm going to take this now. And when you're doing this, try and not touch your hand on the glue parts back on the face. I want to keep that as clean as possible. And I a lot of times have baby wipes when I'm working, and that's a good suggestion, is have your baby wipes on your desk all the time so that you can just grab one and clean your hands so you don't get stuck. And we're going to start bringing this around. And if you see the glue, don't worry about it. It's not going to show up later. Or if you need to put a little bit more around the face, put a little bit more around the face. So I'm going to bring this into here. I'm going to glue this just a little bit to catch the ends, and then we're going to trim those off. I try to leave my glue standing upside down in something when I'm working on it. We're trying to catch all of those so it looks like she's pulled back into a bun. And you can put glue back over the top at the ends and lay them down. That's okay. Isn't she looking good? I might need to put a little bit of glue back up in there to help that hair lay down just a little bit. Alright. The fun stuff here. So let's move that to the side and let's talk about getting this body on. Make sure we've got the right body here. So when we do this, we want to make sure that this head is standing straight up and down as possible. I tried putting this on a couple of different ways, and you might have a glue that you like better. I did try with the super glue, and I didn't like it as much, but I didn't like the hot glue showing as much. So kind of do what you're comfortable with, if that makes sense. And I think if I don't put the hot glue out on the edges so far, it won't squish out. But make sure you've got this standing up, straight up and down as much as possible. And we're going to put her on there. I'm going to hold her just for a little bit to let all of that sink in. You also, I could have done better on my sewing on top. You also could put a little hair barrette, a few beads sewn together in her hair. And we're not going to put her bun on until after we put her shawl on, because it goes on the outside of her hair. And I might go to a 6-inch piece, I think, of the yarn instead of 4. I think it's a little bit fuller. And okay, so we've got her done with getting her head on. We're going to work on the squash blossom necklace, and I think this is really what just makes her. So we're going to show you how to do that. So what I really think sets this doll out to describe that she is Navajo is a squash blossom necklace, and I really like it. And one of the reasons that we have waited until now to do it is that we need to know how big to make it, and so that kind of depends on how everything is put together, and so we can adjust for that. So that's the reasoning why we do it now. So we're going to use seed beads, and these are size 11 seed beads. We're using turquoise and silver, and I've got these at Hobby Lobby. I do have them in the kits. It takes about 70 of the silver and a dozen, I think, of the turquoise, or a little bit more, but you want to make sure that you have really good ones, because I've gotten these in the past and they're all different sizes, and it really messes up the necklace and the design. So this time I really went in and made sure that these are all exactly the same size. So these were check glass beads. So I've got my beading needle, and I went ahead and put on my other half of my sinew. And like we talked about, it's waxy, so it helps thread and hold in place that other regular string would not. First thing we want to do, though, is make sure it goes over the needle and both strands of our sinew before we start to do anything. We're going to put that knot again in the bottom to hold on our beads. I'm going to do at least 3 through that, so we get a big enough that the bead won't slide off, and I want a big enough tail that I can tie onto that when we get back up to the top. And I always do kind of one more, because that is usually spread out a little bit, and by putting one more right on top of that, that usually makes it rounder and bigger. So that's my reasoning behind that. So I think I'm going to start out with about 7, I believe. We'll take a look at it when we start here. I don't think this is regular fleece. You can usually buy this when you're beading, because it holds your beads in place. They don't run around on you. I used to bead a lot in the car when I was traveling and teaching, and it really helps hold your beads in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our doll, and we're going to kind of look at where the back of her head would start and where our design would actually start. I think I'm going to go 10. These are a little bit smaller than what I was originally working with, and go 10 regular ones before we just start our design. So we're going to go 2 down and a turquoise. So I've got my length on, and I'll show you again from the back to the side. It's not very far. We will want to start that squash blossom. So I'm going to go 2 and the turquoise. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump over the turquoise and back into those 2. And we want to keep that nice and tight up here, and we're going to pull that, and you may want to retighten it and pull that out. So we've got that on. We've gone back through these 2 silver beads. Now we're going to go back on top of this 3rd one on top and go through it from the top to the bottom, and that's going to line this back up straight again so that we're lined up nice and straight. And then we're going to put 3 beads on. There's going to be 3 beads in between, and then 2 more silver ones that are going to go out on the edge, so a total of 5 silver. Do I have 5? Yep, and 1 turquoise. I'm going to put those all on. I'll show you on my paper again in a minute here to explain this a little bit better. Then we're going to go back up between the 2 turquoise, just the 2. Those are the ones that are going to go out, stick out. And we're going to pull this so that it gets it nice and tight. And if it doesn't get tight, just pull your turquoise bead back out and pull it and then tighten that up. And then we're going to go the 3rd one up. We're going to go back behind it. Back behind it. Just think about forming that straight line. Slippery little suckers. And through that bead only. And that's going to put that one off to the side. And you're going to have a straight line. And that's another reason that we're keeping this sinew, is because it doesn't show up as much, because that little loop will be on the outside of that bead. So we're going with our thread. We're going 1, 2, 3, and then we have 4, 5, and then the turquoise. So we're putting all of those on. And then we're going up and around that turquoise, back through those 2 beads, and up and around that 3rd one. And we're going to keep on doing that. So we're going to put on 3 more, 4, 5, our turquoise bead. And we're going to come down, go up, around that turquoise, back through the 2 silver, up and around that one right there. And we're going to do 5 or as many as you want to do of those. If you need to slow that down a little bit and look at them again, we're going to do 5 silver. So we're using a lot more silver than we are our little turquoise guys here. 5 silver. And a turquoise. And we're going to go back through the 2 silver. Skipping that outside turquoise. If you come through that turquoise, it's all going to fall off because there's nothing holding it on. And we're going to tighten that up and pull that nice and tight. And you can see it's not laying straight till we go up through that 3rd silver one and down through it again. Half of the reason I do these videos is I've forgotten so much. You won't believe what I can forget. And I'll forget how to do something, and these videos help me so I can go back and do something again as much as it helps you. Okay, so now we have 3 little guys. So let's do this again. 4, 5 silvers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I love these little mini squash blossoms. Through the turquoise. Back through the 2 silvers. Back through the 2 silvers. Hold that tight. So you get it nice and tight. Okay, and we're already on number 4. So then back through that 3rd one, on the top of that 3rd one, up on top, so that you're going the same direction as you'll be doing the rest of the bead, so it lays straight. So we have 4 now. Okay, let's do one more. And then we'll have one side finished. Three, four. I swore I'd never do beading. And but I do enjoy it. Okay, so now we're going to go up through the 2 silvers. Pull that tight. And the 3rd one, go up on top and come through that silver one. Okay, so this is going to be our one right before the squash blossom. Let's take a look at it, see how we're looking lengthwise. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't want it really hanging down that far because your shawl covers up so much of that. And when you do pull that down, see how far it does come down. So that looks just about perfect. So we're going to do a little bit different when we get to here. Okay, now that we have 5 of our little petals, we're going to come down and do the blossom area, which is the big arch area. And so we're going to start with 3 silver beads. 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be our separation. And then we're going to go to a turquoise bead. And then we're going to do 5 silver. And this is going to be one side of our turquoise arch, or what they call a blossom. And a turquoise. And we're going to come back and go through all 5 plus the turquoise bead, and I'll show that to you in a minute, but just so you see it here, we're on these 3. We added the turquoise. We're going to do one side and then come back and do the other side of the squash blossom. And so come back in, go through all 5 and the turquoise. That center turquoise we're going to be going through a couple times, so it's kind of like our anchor there. And make sure we've got that nice and tight. Now we're going to come back and do the other side, which is going to be 5 silver, 1 turquoise, 3, 4, 5, and a turquoise. And we're going to do the same thing. Come back through these 5 and the turquoise. So we're crossing through that turquoise twice. Actually 3 times if you count the first time. We're coming back through it twice. And get that nice and tight. You can see it start to give that shape. And you can see it's turned around from this side now, so we can start going up the other side. So we have done 1, 2, 3 turquoise, and then we've come in and done 5 silver, 2, 3, 4, 5, and turquoise. And we have come back out and gone through the 5 and the turquoise again. Come over to the other side, we have 5 silver beads and a turquoise. And we're going to come back in and go through the 5 silver beads and the turquoise again. Now this will flip, and we'll be going up this side now, and you won't really even notice that it's flipped. You'll just start working up this side. Okay, so we want to do backwards now. And this first one is a little bit different because we're kind of going backwards. So we're going to do the 3 in between. And we're going to add one more to this one because we're coming up at a different angle. So we're going to do 4 there and 2 more. So 6 instead of 5. We'll show you in a minute. It evens out. 5, 6. And our turquoise. Because we're working from the bottom up now. So we wanted to, and this is only going to be the one time that we're going to adjust that. So we've got to skip or go through, skip the turquoise, go through the 2 beads, 2 silvers. Come on, fingers and eyeballs. So go through those, and we're going to go back the 3rd one and go from the bottom, the top, this way. So we're going up, but we're still going the same direction. I'll draw that for you in a minute here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just want to make sure we've got it all nice and even looking. We'll stop and look at it and draw it, and the turquoise. Skip the turquoise through the 2 silvers. We're going up on top of that 3rd turquoise bead and going from the top forward, so it's always moving in the direction of this necklace. Okay. Pull that a little bit tighter. So let's lay this down, make sure we've got it all nice and straight here. I've got to pull, it did something a little bit there. You can see how we added that 1 bead right there, because we're working from the bottom going up, that needed that 1 extra bead. So we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 silvers and a turquoise. We'll make that turquoise. And we did that all 1. We skipped over the turquoise, went back through the 2 silver, came up and went through that silver one there. And then we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a turquoise. And up and over that, back through the turquoise and back around, and we'll keep on going there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a turquoise. And we just keep on coming on now. So we're going to come back with this little wire, and we're going to run it through just the bottom arc of our squash blossom, and you want to bring it all the way through. Try and get it all the way through all of those beads, from the turquoise to the center turquoise, all the way across to the end of the turquoise. Come on, Aaron. I guess if you couldn't get them all the way through, you could put one halfway and stop and cut it off and put one the other halfway. But I want to go all the way through. There we go. Now we're coming. Alright, see it pop out there? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to glue it into place. So we're going to glue our wire into place with a tiny bit of super glue at each end. So now that we have that one in place, we'll cut this one. And just glue that into place. And I'm just going to give that a minute or two to dry so I don't get my hands into it as we finish it up. The gauge wire that we used on this was 28 gauge. So now we're going to go ahead and finish up our side. And we had done 10 on the other one, so let's try 10 on this side. If I can get these little boogers in here. Come on. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Got the monsoons going out in the background here. And now that we have this wire done, we can take it and just give it a nice arch shape. And you may need to do that with your pliers, or another thing that I have done is kind of curled it around my pencil so that I get that nice shape. Now we're going to take our doll and we're going to see how well this all fits before we do anything drastic. I'm just going to do one little knot here, not tie it, just hold it into place. I'm going to pull this all down. Get it kind of going here. Now, I still need some more room in her. She seems to be a little bit more wide around the neck, and each one's going to be different. And you don't have to have them meet exactly on the edge. We can adjust it here. So it's okay. We're going to cover this up with our shawl. So all of that can be adjustable. We can keep adding on one side till we get the length we want. So let's try again. Tie that knot. Just hold that in place till we kind of see where we want it. I always kind of pull this guy down. Let's see. I think we need another 5 more. I think this got a little bit wider, which I'm not upset with at all. I probably could have done 15 on each side to start with this one. But you can adjust on one side, and you'd rather have probably not as many as too much, because you can't take them off that one, but you could always add on. Okay, let's try again. Hold that into place and pull that down, and that looks good there. That's getting better, because this is going to go up tight against the neck. I keep trying to make that the middle, and it's not the middle. So that's part of my issue. because we don't want that too much farther down, because we want that, don't want that covered up with our shawl. I'm going to go just a couple more. I really think, and then I think I need to get my tape out and roll my velvet again. Let's pull that, see how that looks. I know I don't want to go any further than that, so I'm going to go ahead and double knot that, tie her up. Nice and tight, and I think I would like to put a tiny dot of super glue. Don't you love these monsoons? Oh, we're so thankful for our rain. Thundering in the background there. A little dot of super glue on there, and then I'm gonna come in and trim these edges. And with beading, you use super glue quite a bit. I'm going to put my beading needle in my thing so it doesn't run away on me. And pull that down. Now, the one thing I glue into place is that squash blossom part, but you could glue each little turquoise section if you don't want to mess with them. So that's an option, so think about that. If they're kind of running wild on you, you can come in and just do a tiny bit of super glue. Usually they lay down pretty good. This guy is giving me trouble, so let's try running him the other direction. Maybe he needs to go back through that way and lay down. I may have to glue each of these little guys. They're kind of fighting me today. I don't know if I didn't get something laid down up there or not. So we're going to clean this guy, and you may have to do it again later. That's up to you. And I want to get this guy right in the middle before I start gluing down. So we're going to do a tiny little one there. And I do it there. And I'm just going to do all of these while I'm at it. They seem to be fighting me this time. And I always seem to be adjusting the others. So let's just get them all down. Get them out of that hair before they stick. Try to make that as even as possible. There we go. I think that looks really good. Okay, I'm not going to mess with it because it's already done. It's a little bit off, but that's all right. It's nice and good, and I'm very happy with it. So we know that some people have a little bit harder times with their hands and seeing the little beads. So we are going to make some squash blossom mini necklaces, the beads, and we're going to put those in the kits for you, and we'll tie them off, but they won't be tied together, so if you need to adjust it or anything, you can do that. But we will also have those available at miriamjoy.com. I want to give you a little bit of a lesson on the squash blossoms. They think they came around 1860 by the Navajos. The little guys here are called petals, and this is the blossom. It's also considered to ward off evil eyes, so that's why they wear it a lot. But it probably came, they think, from the Spanish or the Spaniards. They probably saw them wearing it and adapted it. There is a Navajo word for it, and it does not mean anything to do with squash blossom, which is kind of interesting, I feel. It is called, in Navajo, it means beads spread out, and they think that it came from like a pomegranate decoration, something that looked more like a pomegranate. And the Navajos call this part a naja, I believe is correct. Don't I might really be off on that. It's spelled N-A-J-O, and I don't think it's pronounced with an H, but it may be. So that's kind of just a little bit of history, so you kind of have an idea of why and how and what different things are called. Okay, we've got her all done. I've come through, got all the boogies off of everything. And we're going to divide this in half so we know exactly where the middle is. And remember which is the most colorful side. That's our most colorful side. And I want to kind of remember that is there. We're going to put it like that. And we want to cover up as much of her body as you want to. If the body's too puffy, you can take a string and put it through the body and back and then tie it, and then it will make it thinner. So that's something to think about. Now you can do the body with tacky glue, or we can do the shawl, putting a shawl on with tacky glue, or we can do it with hot glue. We just got to make sure that we get it on, or you can use a combination of both. That's up to you. So I am going to start. I'm going to pull the left side over first. Oh, good one. Get that left side, and then we'll do the right side. And we're going to pull that right over. Get that as nice and even as we can. See, I've got a little bit of glue there. That's the only downside to that. So you want to not do that if at all possible. And then on these kits, I found these reclaimed buttons. They were actually on a leather vest, and I love these for these dolls. I have looked and looked and looked and looked, and I could not find anything as nice as these. So you can glue them with whatever type of glue you think they need. I'm going to use hot glue today. You could use E6000 and put them on really, really well. See if I can do it without getting burned. And we want to make sure that we get that right in the middle. A little bit more up to the top than down at the bottom. And we're going to put on her bun. And the bun cut off our little ends. Remember how I talked about making that one go down a bit. Even them out as long as short as you want to make them. We're going to hot glue that on. Okay. We want this half on the head and half on the shawl, right in the middle of the back. And that is it. She is all done. Isn't that nice and sweet? Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Share it so we can continue to grow. We also did the kits to make it a little bit easier for you. We priced everything out. We figured it was around $83, so this really is a big savings, so you don't have to go out and purchase everything individually. And it comes with some of your basic stuff that you wouldn't normally have. We've got some awesome, the native buttons that we used on our little dolls, as well as our seed beads. And we know that some of you do have a hard time, so you can order packets where the little mini squash blossom is already made up for you. So if you have a hard time with that, we've got that as well. So we've kind of got you covered there. So check all of that out at miriamjoy.com. Thank you so much. God bless.